My name is Emma Sullivan. I was 31 years old when I received an email that sent my entire life in a completely different direction. The email arrived on a cold evening in late autumn in Denver. Outside Emma's small apartment window, raindrops slid quietly down the glass. The city was blurred beneath a haze of yellow lights and a thin layer of mist. She had just finished an audit report that had taken days to complete and was about to shut down her computer when her phone vibrated. The sender was her mother, Linda Sullivan. Emma was surprised. Her mother rarely sent emails. She usually called when she needed help or sent brief messages asking Emma to handle some family issue. Something felt off. Emma opened the email. Only a few short lines appeared on the screen. The family has made a decision. You do not need to attend your grandmother's will reading. Do not contact anyone anymore. From now on, we should go our separate ways. I wish you all the best. Emma read the email over and over again. Each time she finished reading it, the cold feeling in her chest grew stronger. There was no explanation, no conversation, no opportunity to speak. Just a verdict that had already been delivered. She placed her phone on the table. In the quiet room, the ticking of the wall clock suddenly seemed unnaturally loud. Her grandmother had passed away less than 48 hours earlier. Yet her family had already decided to remove her from their lives. Emma opened the family group chat. It was gone. She searched for it again. Nothing appeared. After a few minutes, Emma realized she had been completely removed. She sat there in silence, not because she was angry, but because everything had happened so easily, as if they had been preparing for this for a very long time. A family photo from the previous Christmas still sat on the wooden shelf beside the window. Linda stood in the center. Ethan stood on the right. Emma stood at the very edge. For the first time in her life, she realized she had always been standing at the edge of the picture. That night, Emma could not sleep. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. She worked in corporate auditing. When she saw an unusual number, she could not ignore it. When she found a detail that made no sense, she followed it until she found the answer. Around midnight, Emma opened her laptop. Instead of rereading the email, she logged into the asset management system her grandmother had entrusted her to oversee for years. Only a few minutes later, she discovered the first irregularity. A request had been submitted to change the beneficiary of the family investment fund. The request had been filed 3 days before her grandmother passed away. The authorized representative listed on the request was Ethan Sullivan. Emma frowned. That made no sense. Her grandmother had always handled her own financial affairs. She had never allowed Ethan to interfere. A feeling of unease began spreading through her. Emma continued investigating. She opened every file, every email, every edit history. Then she found a document that had been deleted from the archive. Fortunately, the system had preserved an automatic backup. Emma downloaded the file. Her heartbeat quickened as it opened. It was her grandmother's most recent will. The will had been created only a few weeks before her death. Emma began reading. At first, everything seemed normal. Then she saw something that made her entire body go still. Her name appeared as the person responsible for overseeing the entire family asset fund. Not her mother, not Ethan, Emma. Her grandmother had given her final authority over an investment fund worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Emma sat motionless. Now everything was beginning to make sense. The email cutting her off. Being excluded from the will reading. Being erased from the family. Maybe none of it was because they hated her. Maybe it was because they needed to get rid of the person holding something they desperately wanted. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Inside the small apartment, Emma stared at her computer screen. For the first time since receiving the email, she no longer felt heartbroken. Instead, she felt cold. Because she had just realized a terrifying truth. Her family had not pushed her out of their lives. They were trying to push her out of a plan that had been prepared long before she ever saw that email, and this was only the beginning. After discovering my grandmother's will that night, I barely slept. Outside, dawn slowly spread across Denver in a pale winter light, but inside Emma's mind, everything remained just as dark. The will was still open on her computer screen. Her name was still there, clear, unmistakable. the sole overseer of the family asset fund. The longer she stared at those words, the more Emma found herself drifting back through the years when she truly believed she was an important part of her family, until she realized she had simply been the one chosen to carry everyone's burdens. The first memory that surfaced was from when Emma was 17 years old, the day she received an acceptance letter to a prestigious summer program in Boston. It was an opportunity she had worked toward for years. She ran home with the letter in her hands, her heart overflowing with excitement. But the moment Emma began sharing the news, her mother interrupted her. Ethan had just been suspended from the school football team. Linda spent the entire evening comforting her son. Emma's acceptance letter sat quietly on the dining table. No one asked another question, no one congratulated her, no one cared. Years later, the feeling had never changed. When Emma graduated from college with honors, her family simply said it was expected. When Ethan quit 2 jobs in a row, everyone gathered around to help him get back on his feet. Emma was always the strong one. At least that was how everyone described her. But the truth was that no one ever asked whether she wanted to be strong. After starting her career, Emma quickly built a stable income. Only a few months later, the requests for help began. First came her father's hospital bills, then her mother's credit card debt. Then the money Ethan needed to launch an online store. Every single time, Linda used the same phrase, "We're family." Emma always agreed, not because she was wealthy, but because she believed her family would do the same for her. Yet, as the years passed, that balance never existed. Everyone became comfortable receiving. No one thought about giving. One evening, 2 years earlier, Emma accidentally overheard a conversation between her mother and Ethan during a video call. They thought she had already disconnected. Linda laughed softly. "It's a good thing we have Emma," Ethan replied. "She always helps. You just have to tell her a story that's emotional enough." Both of them laughed. Emma still remembered exactly how that moment felt. Not anger. Disappointment. A quiet, heavy disappointment, like watching a crack appear in a wall she had always believed was solid. But the event that truly changed everything happened after her grandmother updated the family asset fund. She decided to reserve part of the money for future education and healthcare needs within the family. Emma was appointed as the manager. The moment that information became known, Ethan's attitude began to change. At first, it was subtle comments. Then came requests. Eventually, pressure. A year earlier, Ethan wanted to withdraw a large amount from the fund. He claimed he was about to join a highly promising investment project. Emma reviewed every document. There was nothing in the fund's rules that allowed it. She refused. That decision infuriated Ethan. He walked out in the middle of a family dinner. Linda immediately took her son's side. She called Emma that very night. "You always make everything more difficult than it needs to be." Emma still remembered every word. "I'm only doing the job I was entrusted to do." The line went silent for a few seconds. Then Linda said something Emma would never forget. "Sometimes family matters more than principles." The call ended. But from that day forward, everything began to change. Distant relatives became colder. Family gatherings mentioned Emma less and less. Rumors began spreading. That she controlled the money. That she was selfish. That she wanted to take her grandmother's assets for herself. Emma knew exactly where those stories came from. But she was too exhausted to defend herself. Then, 1 week before her grandmother passed away, an aunt unexpectedly called her. The woman rarely involved herself in family conflicts. Her voice was filled with concern. "Emma, you need to be careful." Emma felt her heart sink. "Careful about what?" Her aunt hesitated. "Your mother and Ethan have been talking about the fund a lot lately. They think you're standing in their way." Emma sat in silence, but that wasn't the most frightening part. Before hanging up, her aunt added one more sentence. A sentence that sent a chill through Emma's entire body. "If your grandmother is no longer here, they'll find a way to remove you from everything." At the time, Emma didn't fully understand what the warning meant. But now, looking back at the email cutting her off and the will glowing on her screen, all the pieces were beginning to fit together. Her family had not pushed her away out of anger. They had not pushed her away out of disappointment. They were trying to eliminate the one person standing between them and the assets they wanted to control. And Emma was about to discover that the situation was far more serious than she had imagined, because somewhere among the records she had not yet examined, a piece of evidence was waiting to be found. A piece of evidence powerful enough to destroy every lie her family had spent years building. If there is one thing years of auditing have taught me, it is that the truth always leaves a trail. No matter how carefully someone tries to hide it, no matter how perfectly a lie is constructed, somewhere, there is always a mistake, a tiny detail, a forgotten piece of the puzzle. And once you find it, the entire wall of deception begins to crumble. The next morning, Emma arrived at the office earlier than usual. Gray clouds covered the Denver sky. She sat in front of her computer with a cup of coffee that had gone cold long ago. Her grandmother's will was still open on the screen, but this time, Emma was not looking at the contents. She was studying the edit history. Every revision, every related document, every email sent during the final months of her grandmother's life. Then something caught her attention. A new amendment had been submitted only days before her grandmother passed away. Emma had never seen this document before. That was highly unusual. According to the family fund's rules, any major changes had to be sent to the overseer, and the overseer was her. Emma immediately downloaded the file. As the document appeared on the screen, her heart began to pound. The amendment changed almost the entire structure of control over the assets. If approved, Ethan would become the primary representative. Emma would be removed from every role. She read it a second time. Then, a third. A cold sensation ran down her spine. Something was wrong. She examined her grandmother's signature at the bottom of the document. At first glance, everything looked perfect. But Emma had handled her grandmother's paperwork for years. She knew that handwriting well. Her grandmother always wrote the letter S in Sullivan with a distinctive extended stroke. In this amendment, that stroke was missing. The difference was tiny, almost impossible to notice, but enough to make Emma suspicious. She kept digging. Then she saw the signing date. The moment she read it, she froze. It was during the period when her grandmother was staying in intensive care. According to the medical records, she was barely able to write on her own. Emma leaned back in her chair. The situation was becoming frightening. If the document was invalid, it meant someone had attempted to alter the inheritance during the final days of her grandmother's life, and the person who stood to benefit the most was Ethan. That afternoon, Emma contacted an attorney who specialized in inheritance disputes. Her name was Olivia Grant. A meeting was scheduled for the very next day. Olivia spent nearly an hour reviewing every document. The office was so quiet that Emma could hear the ticking of the clock. Finally, Olivia set the file down. The expression on her face turned serious. "Emma, I think we're dealing with something much bigger than you realize." Emma remained silent. Olivia continued, "If these medical records are accurate, the chances of this document being signed legally are very low." Emma felt her throat go dry. "What exactly are you saying?" Olivia looked directly at her. "I think someone attempted to create this amendment after your grandmother was no longer capable of verifying its contents." The room fell silent. A few seconds passed. But to Emma, it felt like several minutes. This had gone far beyond a family disagreement. It was no longer about rumors whispered behind her back, no longer about manipulative phone calls. This was a calculated plan, a plan designed to gain control of the assets at any cost. Olivia immediately began gathering additional evidence. 2 days later, new information arrived. The nursing facility where Emma's grandmother had received treatment provided visitor records from her final weeks. Ethan's name appeared on the list, not once, but repeatedly. What made it even stranger was that several of those visits had never been mentioned by anyone in the family. Emma stared at the report. A feeling settled inside her that she had never wanted to confront. Maybe the younger brother she had protected for years was hiding something far bigger than she had imagined. At the same time, Olivia filed a request to halt the entire inheritance distribution process. The court approved it. All transactions were frozen. All transfers were suspended. The news reached the family within hours. Then the inevitable happened. Emma's phone began ringing. The first call came from her mother. She did not answer. 10 minutes later, another call came in. Then another. Then came the messages. "Emma, what are you doing? Call me back right now." Then Ethan called. Then her aunts. Then her uncles. People who had not contacted her for months suddenly appeared all at once. It felt as though someone had pulled the support beam from a dam and the entire flood had burst through. Emma watched her phone screen light up again and again. More than 20 missed calls in a single evening. She answered none of them. For the first time in years, she no longer wanted to explain herself. She no longer wanted to apologize. She no longer wanted to save anything. Yet among the dozens of chaotic messages, one email caught her attention. It was from Ethan. Only a single sentence. "You should stop before things get worse." Emma read the message several times, then she slowly closed the screen. Because she understood something important. When innocent people are investigated, they usually try to prove the truth. But when people are afraid of the truth being exposed, they usually try to silence others. And in that moment, Emma knew she was getting very close to whatever her family had been trying to hide. A secret big enough to terrify all of them. A secret that would change everything in the confrontation that was about to come. The final confrontation took place on a Friday morning. The Denver sky was unusually clear. Sunlight streamed through the large glass windows of the law office building. But inside the conference room, the atmosphere was so heavy that almost no one dared to look directly at anyone else. Emma entered alongside her attorney, Olivia Grant. In her hand was a black document case. It was not thick. It was not heavy. Yet inside it was enough truth to change the lives of everyone sitting in that room. Across the table sat Linda Sullivan. Beside her was Ethan. Several close relatives were there as well. No one spoke. No one greeted anyone. After months of tension, everyone understood that there would be no room for lies today. Olivia spoke first. Her voice was calm and professional. "We will present all evidence before proceeding with the legal process." Linda nodded slightly, but Ethan maintained a cold expression, as though he were still trying to convince himself that everything remained under control. Emma looked at her brother. For the first time in many years, she no longer felt hurt. She was no longer angry, only disappointed. Olivia opened the first file. It contained records from the nursing facility, dates of visits, visitor logs, meeting times. Every detail was clearly documented. Then came the medical records. Doctors confirmed that Emma's grandmother had not been capable of handling important legal documents during the period when the amendment to the will appeared. Ethan began losing his composure. He shifted in his chair repeatedly. His eyes constantly moved toward his attorney. But this was only the beginning. Olivia placed a small recording device on the table. Emma recognized it immediately. It was the phone call she had saved months earlier. The room became completely silent as the recording began to play. Ethan's voice echoed clearly through the speakers. "If she stops managing the fund, everything will become much simpler." No one spoke. The recording ended. The silence lingered. This time, no one could claim it was a misunderstanding. No one could argue that anything had been taken out of context. Too much evidence had already been presented. Everything was beginning to come together into a complete picture. Linda slowly turned toward her son. The familiar protective look was gone. In its place was shock. Ethan tried to speak. "Everyone is blowing this out of proportion," but the words sounded so weak that even he seemed unable to believe them. Then Olivia brought out the final piece of evidence, an old, sealed envelope. Emma immediately recognized the handwriting on the outside. It belonged to her grandmother. The letter had been kept by the family attorney under her grandmother's direct instructions. It was only to be opened if a dispute over the estate ever occurred. Olivia began reading. The letter spoke about Emma. Her grandmother wrote that Emma was the only person she trusted to protect the family's assets. She also wrote that for many years she had watched her granddaughter sacrifice far too much for people who failed to appreciate it. Then the room fell completely silent when Olivia reached the final section. Emma's grandmother revealed that she had repeatedly refused private requests for loans from both Linda and Ethan. She feared that after her death, they would attempt to gain control of the entire family fund. That was why she had entrusted oversight to Emma, not because she loved her more, but because she trusted her more. Linda broke into tears. Tears rolled down the face of the woman who had caused Emma so much pain over the years. But this time, Emma felt no sense of victory, because the truth always comes with a price. And the price today was the collapse of a family. Ethan lowered his head. There were no more arguments, no more excuses, no one left to defend him. After several minutes of silence, Olivia turned to Emma. "What would you like to do next?" Every eye in the room shifted toward her. In that moment, Emma understood that she held more power than she ever had before. If she wanted to, she could take everything much further. She could pursue years of legal battles. She could seek damages. She could force the people who had hurt her to pay the price. But Emma chose not to. She slowly stood up. Her voice remained calm. "The family fund will be transferred to an independent management firm. I am stepping down from my role as overseer." Everyone looked up at her, surprised. Linda stared in disbelief. Even Olivia seemed slightly taken aback. Emma continued, "I do not want to spend the rest of my life fighting my family. I just want to be free." No one said a word, because everyone understood. This was not surrender. It was liberation. 3 months later, everything had changed. The estate distribution was completed under independent supervision. Ethan no longer had control over any of the funds. Linda lived a much quieter life. The rumors that had circulated for years gradually disappeared as the truth spread throughout the family. As for Emma, she moved to Seattle. She bought a small apartment overlooking the water. On her first morning there, standing in front of the large window, she realized something. For years, she had tried to become the person her family needed, strong, responsible, always sacrificing, but she had never been allowed to become herself, until now. The wind from the water drifted into the room. Sunlight stretched across the wooden floor. For the first time in many years, Emma felt at peace, because she finally understood a simple truth. Family is not made up of people who constantly demand your sacrifice. Family is made up of people who still value you even when you stop giving. And sometimes, the bravest decision you can make is not to keep enduring. It is to be strong enough to walk away, and then discover that on the other side of heartbreak, a better life has been waiting for you all along.